if I decide to follow Jesus and if I believe in him, does that then mean that I'm condemning like the people I love? I can still feel like the visceral reaction that went through my body when I told my mom, hey, like I'm Christian. My name is Priyanka Patel. I'm an InterVarsity alumni as part of the South Asian chapter of InterVarsity called OneWay. And God is using my story to show the world and the people around them that God is for all people, even those who don't know him yet. Welcome to InterVarsity World Changers.
Priyanka, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So glad to have you. Priyanka, before we dive into your story, will you take just a moment and give our audience a brief introduction?
Yeah, for sure. So I was formerly known as Priyanka Patel, recently got married, and now my name's Patel. But before all of that, I grew up in a small town on the border of Oklahoma and Texas. It's called Gainesville, Texas. Absolutely loved it. 16,000 seat of the county. So I grew up in a very small town, America. And then on the other hand, I also grew up in a joint family in a very traditional Gujarati family. So I lived with 9 other adults. And so it was a mix of cultures. But again, had a great time. And then, eventually came out of all of that and decided to go to the big city. Went to Austin for college, med school in San Antonio, and now I'm in Houston for residency.
Okay. All right. Man, yeah, what an interesting meeting of different cultures all in one space there. lots of different. I'll bet you could tell us some really fascinating cultural intersection moments from life, and I'm sure a few of those will actually come up as we chat today, Priyanka. Mm-hmm. But yeah, super excited to have you. And just for our audience who's listening in, who maybe is familiar with our typical format and sort of the way that we talk through these conversations, ours will be just a little different because a lot of the time our alumni, we invite them in to talk about like sort of area of vocation and calling in that way and the ways that God is at work. And that's certainly the case for you as well. That God is at work in your calling and your vocation, but we're gonna just tweak the story the way that you're telling the story, in that we're sharing more about the very real challenges that you faced during your college years of sort of like coming into a relationship with Jesus and navigating some challenges that brought about. And then some later opportunities that really opened up for you to minister to others in some cool ways. And as I already said, a lot of that story unfolds while you're on campus. So we're going to spend a lot more time like in your InterVarsity years than we might with a lot of our other conversations. So it'll be a little different, but I'm super excited because our alumni are partnering with God and his world-changing work in so many diverse ways. And I'm looking forward to getting to hear your story, Priyanka. So thanks a lot for joining us today.
Of course, I'm excited. InterVarsity in OneWay was a huge part, as I'm sure we'll talk about. So very happy for the opportunity.
That's awesome. So, well, yeah, let's dive in right there. Tell me, like, take us back to the beginning of this InterVarsity story. Like, how did you come to meet InterVarsity and OneWay specifically? Where did that begin?
Yeah, for sure. So I met InterVarsity on college. As I kind of mentioned earlier, I grew up in a very, very small town, and it was a culture shock coming to Austin. And to provide just a little bit of like context, before I came to college, my only experience with Christianity was mainly through some of my friends in school. It wasn't something we really talked about. I associated Christianity with the Confederacy or with white Southern America. Not, I guess, with the Confederacy specifically, but some of the people that I knew that were the most vocal about it usually had their nails painted with the Confederate flag, or some of the churches were very like proud of Southern pride. And I'm sure that wasn't all that there was to, and there was also plenty of other churches that were completely different, but it was a very, very tied to like small town rural culture. And all the people that I saw that were Christian all looked the same. They were all American. They had all been born into Christianity. And so that was just kind of my assumption. And the only time I'd gone to church, a friend had invited me and they had told me, I think the sermon was actually about Jesus flipping the moneylenders' tables. Beautiful passage, but I think the only context that I got out of it was, if you don't believe, you're going to hell. I'm sure that's not what the sermon was saying, but sometimes I think we as human beings interpret things differently when we have our own emotions and our own feelings that we bring. So quite a negative view.
Okay. Yeah. You bring some interesting things onto campus with you as you're about to engage with OneWay for the first time. Okay.
Yeah. And then, I'm walking through campus, and UT is a huge, huge campus. I'm like, how in the world am I going to know where my classes are? And there was a group that was tabling, and they were offering tours to all of the new freshmen to show them, and they would walk you personally to where your classes were going to be. I was like, oh, this is great. And they seemed so friendly. So I signed up. There was this short little Indian girl. Her name was Marin John. I wrote my name, I wrote my phone number, and then I left, and I did not show up to the tour. So that was the thing that got me to sign up. I was like, oh, I'm not going to go. But something surprising happened, and that was that girl, Marin, remembered my name and made it a point to text me a few times over the semester.
Wow.
And she would text me and invite me to come study with her, to come to her apartment, and she would warm me up some of her mom's Indian food. And she just loved on me quite a bit. And even though I knew, okay, she's part of this college ministry, she would, of course, invite me to things like small groups and large groups, and she'd invite me to church. But I said no most of the time. And even when I said no, she was still interested in being my friend, and she still loved and cared for me. And so that won a lot of, I think, good grace, and really showed that I had a lot of perceptions, I think, of Christianity and Christian people that were just incorrect. Quite honestly, I had made a lot of assumptions, and there were things in my mind that I associated that just were not true. Or at least they're definitely not the full story. God's people is definitely more diverse than I think I understood at the time. She was so kind that I basically just started to go to more of the meetings. So I definitely started to go to small group more regularly. I started to go to church more regularly. I started to go to a large group more regularly. And at the time, I think I was like, when you're Hindu, you can believe in all religions. Like, all God is God. It's just that they take a different name, or there's a different rule book, is kind of the way I explain it.
Okay.
But in Christianity, there's only one God, and there's only one way.
Yes.
Hence OneWay's name. And so I think I started to wrestle, okay, what am I doing here, God? Like, which God are you? Are you the God of Christianity? Are you the God of Hinduism? I don't know. But at the end of my first year, a bunch of us sat down and did a little prayer circle where everyone kind of shared the biggest things that they were struggling with. And it was such a vulnerable, beautiful moment. And I had shared hey guys, I'm struggling with this decision. Please pray for me. And whatever God answers, we're just going to go with. And so that was kind of my first year on college and how I met InterVarsity.
Wow. That is quite a shift from how you were thinking and feeling, sort of the perceptions that you had and the experiences, not just the perceptions, but experiences that you had with Christians and Christianity, morphing over the course of this first year into a space where you're actually asking people to pray for you and saying and kind of whatever comes up is the direction I'm going to start going. What is it that really started to bring about that shift for you of saying maybe Jesus, maybe Christianity is for me? What was so instrumental in moving things in that direction for you?
Yeah, I think it honestly boils down to two things. Which I kind of touched on, but the first is the way the people of OneWay loved each other. That community was so beautiful. It was so different. And I had never seen that. Like, you walk into a space and there are people welcoming you. They remembered your name, even if you'd only been there one time. They cared about you. They asked you questions. They included you. I never felt like an outsider, even though I clearly wasn't Christian. They never shied back from what they believed, but they also never excluded me because of it. And I was like, man, I've never seen, and these are all like kids. These are college kids. And, you know, I'm used to the popularity, or like kids are a little awkward. Teenagers are awkward. And instead, this community just was so kind, and they loved me. And I said, I want to be a part of this. So it wasn't necessarily that I wanted to be a part of Christianity at first, or like Jesus, but I wanted to be a part of his people, is kind of, I think, the hook that I got started with. So InterVarsity and OneWay was just huge. And then a second part of that was seeing people who look like me that were Christian. So OneWay is the South Asian chapter of InterVarsity, and most of the people in OneWay, not all, but most of them were from Kerala, which is a state in India. And so they were Malayali. There was a few others that were also from different parts of South India. But they were Indian, and their parents were Indian, and their grandparents were Indian. And they look like me. And I thought, you know, if God like somehow like has shown himself to these people, and he is a God for Indian people, maybe he could be a God for the North Indian people too, and the Gujarati people, even though like I don't know that many people who are Gujarati and North Indian that follow Christ. Clearly God is trying to reach the Indian subcontinent and more parts of the world than I think I thought.
Wow. That's so cool. I love that. Just that growing picture. And and honestly, the way that you came into that feels kind of different from what we normally hear. Because so often I, at least for me, I hear people say, I really love the things that Jesus is all about. It's his people that really throw me off. And you were sort of having the reverse experience of, you're like, I don't really know if I'm interested in Jesus, but his people seem to be really interesting to me. And there's something that is drawing me in about them. And that's just really, that's awesome. That gives me a lot of hope. I'm excited to hear that was the reality for you in that moment. And I know that there's one person in particular. I know that there are many people who you can name very specifically and tell stories of how they were instrumental in your faith development. But there's one name that I remember you mentioning to me once before, and that's someone named Punar, I believe. Am I remembering correctly? Can you tell me about the impact of that friendship on your journey?
Yeah, of course. So kind of like almost, this is a great segue of where we left off, but you know, I prayed that decision at the end of my first year, and then second year I said, all right, let's get back into it. I'm hanging out with my OneWay friends. And we went to go study at a coffee shop, and it just happened to be that was Texas OU weekend. And so then they were like, let's go to a watch party at one of the leaders of OneWay, like their house. And I didn't care at all about football, but I wanted to hang out with my friends. So I said, okay, let's go. And then when I went to this watch party, you know, we're introducing ourselves, saying hello, all of that kind of stuff. And I met this older gentleman named Punar, and he was like, oh, I'm Punar Bhakta. And I said, no way. Like,
no way.
Yeah, like I'm Priyanka Bhakta. And for those of you who don't know, like Bhakta and Patel, they're very, very common surnames. So we're not at all related, nothing like that. But they do tell you a lot about a person. They tell you kind of like what group they're in. They tell you immediately that person is Gujarati or has married a Gujarati. And hearing that name here, I heard Bhakta and I said, this guy must have grown up with parents like mine, with people like mine. And then I heard he was Christian. I said, whoa, you know, because everyone else that I met, even the Indians, like they'd been Christian for generations, and I hadn't met anyone who like made the decision to switch. And that was a big kind of wrestling point for me at that time, is like, again, you know, God, I know like you called these people, but like, are you sure you called me? Cause like, why was I born into a Gujarati family? If you really called me, wouldn't I have been born into like a Malayali family? And so I was just wrestling with that. And then I heard his last name, And he told me he's a Christian. I said, if God could call him, God could call me too. And I think he gave me the permission to myself to really wrestle with like, okay, it's clear that God wants you. Like now you just need to figure out like, is this something you want to pursue and go kind of all in on?
Wow. Who would have guessed? I mean, this is just one of those amazing like insight into a culture very different than what I grew up in, that just hearing someone's surname would be like this, something that unlocks something like that. Is just such a cool moment of like, oh wow, just hearing this person's surname opens the door even wider for you to step in and say like, maybe Jesus is for me too. And I that's so amazing. And so we are in your sophomore year, I think, is where we're in the story. And then my memory is that December of your sophomore year is a very important moment. But that there's also some significant challenges that come along with this important moment. Can you take us then to December after this conversation with Pinar and some of the ways that this has opened us up? Like what, or has opened you up? What happens in this moment in December?
Yeah, for sure. So it's like, okay, I think that conversation with Pinar gave me like, what's it called? Like the ability or the freedom to say like, hey, let's actually like seriously consider this. I think like,
okay,
again, if God called him, God could call me too. And so then I'm continuing to just wrestle with this whole thought of, okay, do I believe in Jesus? But if I believe in Jesus, I have to believe in everything about Jesus, everything the Bible says, even the parts that I don't like or the parts that make me uncomfortable. And I didn't know if I was ready. And the biggest, I think, part about that was this idea of what happens to people who don't know him. And I thought, like, if I decide to follow Jesus and if I believe in him, does that then mean that I'm condemning like the people I love to hell? And I think that's not true in any sort of way, but I think that was like the wrestling that was going on in my mind about the implications of my decision and what that would mean. And then I knew my family was very traditional and that it was not going to go well and smoothly at all. And so I think I was just so anxious about what am I going to do? Like I have to tell them at some point, how are they going to take this? And at the same time, I'm praying and praying, but I felt like I wasn't hearing anything. Like it felt like I was just talking to a wall. I was just praying, God, God, God. And then one of my friends from OneWay actually said, you know, like, why don't you try praying specifically to Jesus? Because, you know, God is God, but it's a very general term that everyone uses and can refer to many things, or everyone has a very different conception of like who God is. But Jesus is a very specific person.
Yes, he's made some very specific claims.
Very specific. And so when you're praying to Jesus, your mind is not thinking of anything else, but you are saying, I'm asking Jesus, and the God that is Jesus' Father and the Holy Spirit, like everything that comes along with him, I'm asking. And so then the next day I just prayed like all day. I'm like driving my parents around. I'm going to Dallas. I'm eating dinner. And if I wasn't talking, I was like kind of praying in my mind. And it was a very anxious time. And then I kind of get home. It's nighttime and I just opened my Bible and it randomly, I think, opened to one of the letters of John, the first letter. And there is a passage in there. I like have it written down somewhere, but along the lines of like, it just boils down that our job as Christians is to love the world and to be loved. And it was just so simple. It felt like the Holy Spirit like came on me and I was like, okay, like, I think you're overcomplicating this. Like God loves you and you're only like all these questions about what happens to everybody. Is this right? Is it okay? Like you are loving like the world when you choose to follow Jesus, and your only job after that is going to be to love the world the way Jesus did. And that felt simple to me. It felt like he had claimed me. It felt like we had a moment. And from there I was like, okay, all right, God, I don't know what's going to come next, but I think you've shown me that you are the God of Jesus. And that's where we were going.
Wow, that's amazing. I love the specificity of that invitation, and you had mentioned that before of like, you know, the we're in your background, like we're open to all these different gods, like God just takes on these different forms, and then to say yes, to say like, let's get very specific and then see what happens. This sort of life of experimentation can be very interesting, and that's where there's this very serious response that have very simple but very like pointed response. And so you mentioned that you were concerned, like my parents are not going to be in support of this. Are you okay talking a little bit about your family and your family's response when you did have an initial conversation with them? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And even now it's crazy to think about how far things have come, which I'm like very happy to say that, you know, the way they reacted initially, like we're at a very, very different place.
That's great.
Which like praise God, and that is only because of him. So when I think back to the moments of when I first told them, it feels almost surreal. It was such a horrible time in my life. Like I can still feel like the visceral reaction that went through my body when I told my mom, and I remember where we were in like the parking lot and everything that happened. So I basically, it was nighttime, we're walking, and I told her like, hey, you know, like I'm Christian. And she was like, oh yeah, like you can be Christian and Hindu. And I'm like, oh no, like I'm only Christian. And she was like, so you don't believe in like Krishna and you don't believe in Hinduism? And I was like, no, you know. And then I think she was like, you're joking, right? And I'm like, I'm not joking. And then it went very poorly after that, and we went into the house, and the rest of my family members got involved, and it was a long night of arguing and kind of going back and forth, and it was a very stressful time. And then the next day, like they took me to my grandparents' house, like my car keys were gone for a little bit. They actually wanted me to like leave college and get married, because I think their idea was like, oh, the OneWay people, or it's your college friends that are making this decision, like you've been bewitched, you just need to be away from them. And I'm like, no, like this is actually what I believe. Like no one else is forcing me to do this. And anyways, the next day, I think there was just some more pressure, and I caved. I was like, okay. I won't be Christian. And I told them this. In my head, I was like, I'm going to still go to church. I'm still believing in Jesus because that decision was made. But they clearly are not in a place to like hear this news. So I'm just going to hide it for them. They want to hear that I'm Hindu, fine. And so I kind of like took it back to them, and I felt so ashamed. That I did that, because I was thinking back to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and I said they were in the fire and they refused to deny God to the point of like burning alive, and I didn't last 12 hours before I took it back. And so I felt like, man, I've like shamed God, I've shamed my family. Who have I not upset? Like it was a horrible, horrible time. And then the next week I actually left to go start my internship. So it gave me some space from my family, but at the same time, I was just alone in a new city and depressed, I think.
Yeah. Wow. So that was one of the questions that I was wondering is like, what was there a moment when you thought about like sort of, okay, never mind, I take it back. So it sounds like at least face to face with your family, as you portrayed reality to them, the answer was yes. But the sort of behind the scenes, you're like, I'm still following Jesus, I still believe this. But even that mismatch was, you felt like, oh no, I missed the mark on this. Where was OneWay in the midst of this story? Like, did they know that this was happening? Were you keeping people up to speed? Like, what's going on with your community?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, OneWay was so instrumental. I had told them beforehand, like, hey, I'm going to tell my parents. So people were praying for me for days and weeks, just because it was very planned. And then I told them, and I was like texting them in between the bathroom, because a lot of what I was doing was monitored. And I was like, guys, like, I can't do this. And they were like they were all praying for me. And even some of my friends who obviously they were not in Gainesville, they were somewhere else, but they would gather and they were praying for me, and they would like just send me encouragement throughout this whole process. And it was truly so beautiful. And I didn't know, you know, what's going to happen to the rest of my relationship with my family. And one of my roommates, and my other like good friend, like Ashley, Anita, both of them were like, hey, like you can stay with us. Like our families would be happy. Even for Christmas, like you don't have a place to come for Christmas. Like you can stay at our house. And
oh, wow.
So it was like, while one part of my world was like very much breaking apart, it was beautiful to see like how like loved and cared for and supported I was. And not just by my friends, but by my friends' families who really like have no, I guess, stake in my life, but decided to to take some stake.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. That's amazing. I love that, just that image of, you know, you said you're like, I have to like go to the bathroom to be able to text them and let them know what's going on. And almost this just very closed off moment that you're sort of stuck in the space of like all hell is breaking loose right now. And that your friends are gathering and praying on your behalf and sort of like urging you on and encouragement and showing up in these really amazing ways. That's what a phenomenal perspective on community and experience with community that you got to have in that space. I'm sure it didn't make those places with your family in the moment any easier, but to know that you had people who were there supporting you through such a hard season. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And to like give credit to my family, I think everyone was just in shock. They were like,
yes.
You know, like, who is this girl? You know, like I grew up very devout. I used to pray every day to we have a little mini temple in our house, and I went in there every morning and prayed. I actually knew the chants. I knew some of the stories, and I was like religious in the Hindu context. And so I think my parents were like, are you like, they really thought I was bewitched, you know?
Yeah. Wow. I'm glad that you said that, because I like being a parent and think like, what would my response be if my child all of a sudden showed up and was like, you know, that thing that we've always been into together that's super important to us. I'm like, that's not a part of my life anymore. I like, for better or for worse, like I can very much identify with like, oh my gosh, that would be heartbreaking. And so yeah, gosh, what a difficult path to walk of like, boy, what does it mean to be faithful to Jesus? And what does it mean for me to like love my family and show them grace and to like navigate this difficult time together? And and this isn't the end. It doesn't just like get all sorted out after that. I know that this is like a long season, and I know that there's you shared with me before that there's a moment where you like change majors, and that even like there are implications for this whole story just with changing majors. Why was that a significant thing?
Yeah, of course. So as I like mentioned, you know, I started this internship in HEB. I was a business major when I first started college.
Okay.
And so I get to this internship, and my boss was amazing. My coworkers were amazing. I actually got to work on a pretty like important project and produce some like really cool results. But throughout this whole way, I was like, I just don't know if I see myself here for the rest of my life. But I couldn't tell. I'm like, is it because I'm depressed and things with my family is falling apart? Or is it that I truly don't like this work and this is not what I meant to do with my life? And so it's just praying and praying. And I was like, God, I really hope that you're telling me it's just that I'm depressed, because, you know, I did really good at my job and they gave me a return offer, and, I would have like in 2 years, I would have graduated. I would have been able to support myself. But I was like, God, if you're telling me I need to do something else, like that might take more years. That's going to take more training. That means more years of being dependent on my family. And I didn't know if I was ready for that. And so, you know, I'm praying. I'm thinking about what are things like that I would do if I wasn't in business school and landed on, okay, maybe medicine. But again, God, I just hope I'm wrong. And then one night I woke up and I was flipped like 180 degrees. Like my head were where my feet were and my feet were where my head was. And I don't normally do that. I don't turn around in my bed. And I was like, okay, maybe God's telling me to change it all. And so I was like, all right, I don't know about this, but here we go. And so then, I made the decision to go the pre-med route and start figuring out what I needed to do to apply for medical school. And I told my parents, and I think they, rightly so, probably thought I was like crazy. They're like, you changed religions and now you're changing careers. And
yeah.
Like, are you stable? Is there anything about your life you don't want to change now?
Seriously.
I think they thought it was a rebellious part of my life because they're like, you just flipping everything out. And I was like, I can see why you are thinking that, but it's just interesting timing, to say the course. And I also do not want to be changing this much, but here we are.
But here we are. Mm-hmm. And you had mentioned that one of the big reasons, I mean, outside of just like completely changing direction, is that you said that this would also change the timeline of sort of financial dependence on your family. And is that because you felt sort of like a, what's the word that I'm looking for here? Give me a second. That you felt sort of an obligation to stay some sort of course with your family if they were investing in you? Like, what was it about their financial investment that made you say, like, this has significant ramifications also for me following Jesus in some way? What was that relationship?
Yeah, I think a lot of it goes to Indian culture. So Indian culture is like very, very communal. Like, when you make decisions, you don't make decisions by yourself. You make decisions with your family and with your community in mind. And to give you context, like, even my dad, he had this very successful job in New York. Like, he had a fantastic salary. It was a great position. And he left all of that to come back to our small town, all because his father said, I need your help. And so he uprooted all of his life and everything he had worked for to come back to literally the podunk of nowhere. And we live there and we love it. But like, that's not what he had planned for his life. And he did that all because his dad said, I need help. And so that's just the way Indian families, or very traditional Indian families, work. And I knew that my parents, like, if I decided to go to med school, that they would want to pay for it. And of course I could be like, no, like, I'm going to take loans. I actually tried, but I was like, my dad is not going to accept this. No matter how angry he is at me, he is a fantastic father. And I think he sees education as his duty. And so I knew like, hey, if I decide I'm going to go to med school, like, and my mom was the opposite. She was a hothead, and she was like, if you do this, like, we're not going to support you. And my dad's like, we'll support you. I don't like what you're doing, but we'll support you. And so I just knew there's something about when you're under someone's household that you do have to, like, I think they would have more of a tie over me, whether that's true or not. Like, until you like live independently by yourself, you are somewhat still under your parents' rule and your parents' household. Yeah. And that's just kind of the way it works. And I knew, like, if I, like, for example, if I had my own salary and I had my own job and my own apartment, I think I would seem more like an adult in their eyes. But if I was still like in training and in school, then they would have a harder time letting me make those decisions, because I would still be like, they're almost like their minor child, regardless of age. And so it's not like my dad's money ever came with strings. He very much was like, no, this is just my duty as a father, is to put you through school no matter what you do with the rest of your life. And although I don't support it, like, it's my duty to take care of you. So, again, the most wonderful, like, parents I could ask for. I just knew that there's a complicated relationship when you are not independent and you just can't make the decisions you want to all the way in that sense. So I think that was, I don't know if I answered your question a little bit, but
no, no, that's super helpful. Just adding some of that framework and that context is really helpful, because you're already living into sort of a strained relationship, and now you are feeling, not just because you're like, oh, I'm kind of done with this major, like, this Jesus that you're following now has also sort of like laid on your heart and confirmed to you, like, I want you to pursue something different. And so now you are also making decisions that add to the strain of that relationship and add complexities and awkwardness that like this, okay, I'm continuing to follow Jesus and it's continuing to make my life harder. And yeah. Okay. That's super helpful context. Priyanka, from there, like I want to fast forward us a little bit to so you changed your major, and then we'll fast forward through the rest of your college career here. After graduation, you did decide to circle back to a conversation with your parents. So why was it that you made this decision to go back and revisit this with them? And a little bit of clarification, were they still under the impression that you had like said, I take it back, I'm not doing this? Or had it been made known to them that you were still following Jesus? Like where are we in that part of the relationship here when you are post-graduation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I graduated December of 2020. So I went home around that time, right around the time that 2021 was starting. And my parents were definitely still under the impression that I was not following Jesus. They kind of knew something was up because I would try to get out of certain like rituals or certain things that would compromise, like would involve like some sort of like idol worship. And I think they knew like something was wrong, but I think they were like, okay, but she's not, as long as she does both, whatever. We were moving forward was, I think, their idea of what was happening. But in my head, I think I'm realizing like, hey, I need to tell them at some point, like this lie cannot go on forever. Like I very firmly believe in Jesus and I'm following him. And although my actions do not always reflect my faith, and sometimes I make mistakes, like this is still my belief. You know, like it's not like I believe less in Jesus. I need to start living that out. And we need to be on the same page. Like I just can't keep lying. So
wow.
At that point, like the way it works is I applied to medical school, but you don't find out or not if you get in until March. So I could potentially be home for 6 months until like, if I got in, the school would start in July, or I could be home for 18 months because I don't get into medical school and I need to reapply. And I thought, you know what would be really awkward is me telling my family, right, like when I come back home and now we're in awkward limbo for 6 to 18 months. If I had any sense in the world, I would just tell them right before I leave. That way we can have that healthy sort of space again. But I was like, but God, I genuinely don't have the courage. I don't have the bravery to bring this conversation up again. So if you want me to tell my family the truth, you are going to have to give me the words because I don't have them. And funny enough, January, it comes up. I'm trying to, I was like, hey, by the way, you know, like this thing where I told you I wasn't Christian, I actually am. And I think because it was the second time, I think they were like, oh, she's serious. So it's still as ugly, still as messy. But I was able to be like, hey, I'm sorry that this is hurting you, but like it's been years and I still believe. And I think they were like, okay. So it was really awkward for a couple of months. But I think their biggest problem with it was they were like, if you're Christian, you can't be Indian. And Indian culture is just so tied into Hinduism. Like culture and religion are really like tied together for a lot of these South Asian cultures. And so for her, she like didn't know, what does it mean to be Christian, but then still like culturally be like Indian. That just didn't exist in her mind. And she was like, well, who's my daughter going to marry? because there's no Gujarati Christians. And then she's like, she's not going to marry a Gujarati. I'm not going to be able, she speaks primarily that language. She speaks some English, but not much. So she's like, I'm not going to be able to like communicate with them or their family. So she was like, okay, fine. You can be Christian, but you have to marry a Hindu. And I was like, I remembered the verse about being equally yoked. And I was like, by the way, it's not that I think
oh my gosh.
Christians are like morally superior to other people. Like we're all people and we all have sin. But I do need to walk in the same direction as my husband. And, I want to raise my kids as Christians, and that's not possible when my partner doesn't believe it. And I was like, what I can promise you, and I meant this, was like, I won't get married. I'll be single forever and follow God and, live my life. And then I think she thought that was worse. And she was like, are you trying to kill me?
No.
I was like, oh, okay. I thought that was a compromise. She did not think that. I was like, okay. But
I'll do my best.
It was okay. Yeah.
Oh gosh. I'm struck by how every step of the process, the invitation and the opportunities, I say opportunities a little like with a bit of a smirk because it doesn't feel that way. But like the moments that Jesus is like inviting you into, like, when is he going to give you a break, Priyanka? Because every one of these is like, this is going to, I know you think the hard part is over, but it's not. That sort of sinking feeling you have in the back of your mind, that is reality creeping up on you here. And oh my goodness, I feel, not having lived this experience myself, so as best as I can, just as a fellow human, I just like feel with you having to like go through those moments, and for your parents to go through those moments with you. Like this is just kind of I don't know, gnarly is the word that comes to my mind. This is just a very gnarly experience. Oh my gosh. You did say that you're married at the beginning of our conversation. So I would be interested to know if there's an important, like, obviously that's important, but as far as the elements that we've talked about here, is there a way that comes into the story that either does it add challenge or does it add something helpful for your relationship with your mom in particular, but with your family? Is there a place in your story for us to circle to that part as well that we can talk about?
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of funny because you're like, is it challenge or helpful? And I think a little bit of both. It was primarily helpful, especially fast forwarding, but there were challenges with that too. So as you can tell from my last name, I did end up marrying a Gujarati.
Okay.
That's awesome. So my mom got what she wanted. But it was so funny because neither of us thought it was going to happen. So his name is Devin Patel. And he actually is also a Christian Gujarati, and he came to Christ completely separate. So he kind of, he would tell you he doesn't know exactly when he was saved, but probably sometime around early childhood. And then around college in a different Christian ministry, the Navigators is really when he became like very solid and like, how to read the Bible, how to study. And he's like, okay, I'm going to like start to follow Jesus with the way my life looks too. So very independently, we came to Christ, and then somehow we got into the same medical school. And, we knew each other. We'd had some mutual friends. But we had such different personalities. Like the only thing we had in common was that we were Christian and both pretty serious about our faith, and happened to also be from the same part of India. So we got on each other's nerves for quite a bit, but then, and I think my mom like knew that I was like, one of my classmates was a Gujarati, and she knew that he was Christian. And so she was like, you need to marry him. And I was like, whoa, okay. No, because for her, it's that simple. Like you check some boxes and you get married, she was like, why would you not get married to him? He believes in what you believe in, and he's Gujarati, like that's perfect. Yeah. But then for me, I was like, well, I want to get married to someone because I love them and because I want to spend the rest of my life with them, and I want to build this like partnership together. And this guy right now, like I always thought he was very handsome, but he kind of gets on my nerves. I get on his nerves. I don't know what kind of partnership that is. But I think for my mom, she was like, well, if you don't take this, like you're purposefully, again, just trying to rebel. So I made up a girlfriend for him. I said, he actually is already dating somebody. Yeah. I was like, he doesn't like Indian girls. He's dating this other girl. And she was like kind of disappointed. Anyways, fast forward. I think me and Devin start to work on our friendship. We start to understand each other a little bit better. There's a lot of healthy like apologies and accountability and just some good friendship going on over the next like few years of medical school. And eventually, the December before my third year, my grandmother had actually passed away, or one of my grandmothers. Wow. And I think I was just so angry because I was like, man, God, like, I don't know. Did these people even get a chance to know you? Like, I don't know if they ever heard your name, and like, no one's ever told them about you, and they've never really had a chance. And just because like, I don't know if they've ever had a chance to really like know you and experience you. And so I felt so angry. Like, why would you make us? Why would you make the whole Gujarati people group if like the whole people group was just going to be condemned? And I was talking to him about some of that frustration, and he told me, you know, there's a verse in Revelation where like every knee, every tongue, and every tribe of people will bow. And he was like, yeah, when they say tribe, it's not just me and you and like Punar, but it's going to be more. Like, he was like, there's going to be so many Gujaratis, you know, there's going to be lots of them. Like, every group is accounted for. And in that moment, I thought, wow, like, one, what an incredible, like, brother in Christ to walk alongside with. But two, I said, what a good friend, you know, like, what a like good person in my life to have to support me. And so I said, okay, let's see where this goes. And then a month later, he ended up asking me out, and we started dating. And then I told my mom, like, hey, like, I'm actually dating Devin. And she was like, no, you're not. He already has a girlfriend. I was like, oh, actually, he never had a girlfriend. Like, I made that up.
I was going to ask. I was going to say, does your mom know that you made up the whole girlfriend thing yet?
Yeah.
Okay, great. She knows.
I was like, I made it up because I was like, I was tired of you asking me. And she was like, she literally goes, my depression is cured by 80%. And I was like, oh, okay. I think for her, it was like definitely God's grace because, again, for me and Devin, like, the ethnicity was like, it's an icing on top of the cake, but it was never part of the cake. But for my mom, it was so important, right? And for God to have worked it together where I got to fall in love with the man that I loved and built my life with and follows Jesus and always like leads me in the right direction in that front, and just like pursuing him. But that also like was just a grace for my mom that he is in that my husband was in a form that was more familiar to her, that she is able to get along with his family members. She's able to speak to them. She has a relationship with them. And I think she saw that like, okay, maybe there's another person who's also Gujarati and following Jesus and they're not mutually exclusive. So I think that was very like healing for her.
Wow. That's so great because we've been talking about these very like hard moments of Jesus inviting you to follow him and to take some pretty rough steps. And now it's like, oh, here this feels like a reprieve. Like, okay, there's been sort of a consolation that has come finally that in the midst of saying yes to Jesus, like not only do you have this, you know, this relationship with Devin that is sort of like, I don't know, redeemed is the wrong word, but it takes a turn, like a positive turn. Like you see, like, oh, this is great. Not only is that you're sort of like working through conflict, you become friends. He becomes somebody that really helps you develop in your own. And then like, oh my goodness, like I'm going to marry this guy. Fantastic. And this has cured my mom's depression by 80%. Finally, the Lord has stepped in a way that has like brought me and my parents closer together. And like, that's so amazing. And I'm also tracking that there's a couple of these different moments where you're talking about people who have been super influential in your life that the Lord has like brought in and has sort of like moved the needle in important ways for you. But I know that there's also somebody in med school that you met that it was like, at least my interpretation of this, tell me if I'm wrong. My interpretation is that it was almost like, all right, Priyanka, it's your turn. Like and maybe there had been other people in the past that they haven't shared with me about, but that this moment was like at med school, there's somebody that you get to step in with. And so can you tell me a little bit about that person and that story?
So I was already in medical school, so several years post-grad. And this person was currently a college student. So she was attending OneWay. She was also from the same part of India I was from. She was North Indian. Her family was also from a Hindu background. She herself was from a Hindu background. But she had independently, also during her college years, come to know Jesus and made the decision to follow him. And I think she was realizing, hey, I need to tell my family, and realizing like, hey, this is not going to be a beautiful conversation. It's probably going to be a very hard and ugly conversation. And I think she was sharing with her OneWay friends that I just some of the struggles and some of, I think, the fear she had about it, or just wasn't really sure what to do. And one of those friends remembered that, hey, there's actually this alumni who went through a very similar situation. Why don't I send you her number and you guys can connect? And so that's how we got connected. And then she reached out to me, and it was so beautiful. Just because she's lovely, she's funny, she's like this young person who's just excited to take on the world and to follow Jesus, but then it's also having these like real fears about what do I do? Like, how do I navigate this well? And it was really beautiful to just, or it was redeeming to sit there and be able to help in some capacity. And I was like, quite honestly, I don't have magic words for you or magic advice. I don't have much of anything to tell you except that you're not alone. Like, you are not alone. I feel you. I hear you. I have been there. I don't know how your parents are going to react, but I can tell you there is a good chance it's not going to be good, you know, and I can tell you how ugly my story got. And I can also tell you it's long and it took a lot of time, and I don't know if your parents will ever come around, but they might. You know, my parents have come around in ways I never thought they would. So all that to say is you really just don't know where the Lord is going with your story and with your relationship with your parents, but it's even harder to live a life full of lies. And so no matter how hard it is, like, you are going to have to tell them, like, if this is like the decision you've made to follow Jesus, like, there's no hiding it. You know, you have to let them know. And that's also freeing. No matter how ugly the conversation with your parents is, like, it's also freeing just making this declaration and moving forward. And I told her, like, I'm proof that you can mess up all kinds of ways. Like, I literally took it back, you know, and you can, like, still follow Jesus, and Jesus will forgive you and you will move forward. And that's not permission to do the wrong thing when you know what the right thing is, but it's proof that we're human and we don't stop sinning once we follow Jesus. We just or Jesus picks us up and then we go right back on it. And so it was so wonderful to get the chance to, like, encourage her and just tell her, like, I don't know what the future is going to look like, but just know that you're not alone, and that, like, you know, Jesus and we are celebrating that there is another Gujarati who has come to know him and has made, like, the decision to follow him.
And is this a relationship that has carried on since? Are you still in touch with her, or was this sort of a, like, we had this one sort of pep talk and I sent her off and she did her thing? Like, what does that look like since then?
No, of course. Well, it's actually crazy. So I actually got to meet her at the recent OneWay reunion. It just happened in 2025. And,
Yeah.
I think she was about to graduate at that time. So she was a senior.
Okay.
And I had finally graduated medical school and I was a resident in Houston. And this opportunity came up and I was actually scheduled to work the day of the reunion in Houston. The reunion is in Austin. And so I was like, am I even going to be able to make it? But I really wanted to. I wanted to see my old friends. I wanted to meet her in person. And by the grace of God, I got out just enough time for us to drive straight to Austin and make it to the reunion. And it was so lovely just getting to meet her in person. And we were like, okay, we need to reconnect and let's set up a time soon to FaceTime. And honestly, we were both busy and we I think tried, and then life got the better of us. But this is a reminder to me that I should reach out to her. So hopefully that's something I'll be doing.
Yeah. Either way, to be able to show up in sort of just the nick of time, and to be able to speak into her life and to provide some level of reality and say, hey, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. It's going to be rough. And I don't know how long it will last. But I can speak to Jesus is there to help you pick up the pieces. A community is there to help you pick up the pieces, and you will not regret being honest in this space. And, even if it goes poorly, that just the weight off your own shoulders of okay, it's out in the open. People just know. And what an opportunity to be able to to encourage and disciple somebody in that direction, because that also does, even just that reality feels like the way of Jesus of this is super hard. And probably it's going to feel like a net loss in the moment. But this is the right thing to do, and I'm going to do it. And you are living proof of saying yes to Jesus brings hard stuff. And there are also consolations that come, that come along the way with Jesus. And what an amazing example to be able to live into for her. And so Priyanka, I ask all of my guests this question. But I would love to know for you how you would frame this in your experience. And would you say that your journey with your family and with this friend in med school, that they have been, or this friend from OneWay, that this has been an opportunity to partner with God in his world-changing work?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think all of this journey with everyone has just shown me God is chasing after us. God is chasing after all kinds of people from all kinds of backgrounds at all kinds of ages and stages and everywhere. What is it? The harvest is plenty, but the workers are few. And he is just calling us to come and work with him. Because I just think even in my mind, I tend to write people off, or I would have written myself off if I'd been known me, but God hasn't, right? God, and we don't know where the world is going to take us, but God does. And so all we have to do is say yes, what he asks, and just try to follow along and let him lead us, even though we might not necessarily know what's going to happen next. Just trust him and keep walking.
Yeah. I love that. And you mentioned at the beginning, you sort of, you telegraphed this for us a little bit, that things have continued to improve and develop with your family. Can you give us sort of a up to speed, how are you and your parents doing and your broader family? How are you all doing relationally and in the midst of all of this now? Absolutely.
It is so beautiful because, again, if you had asked me years ago, is this where I would be like, no, it will never be like this. And it's proof that I clearly don't know everything. But my relationship with my parents is great. I think they finally came around to it. I do think it helps that I'm married, because I think in the traditional Indian culture, they're like, okay, she's part of her own household. So I think they do give some respect, I think, to me and my husband as a unit, and allow us to make decisions, even if it's not what they would do. But it's fantastic. My sister recently got married, and, she had a very traditional Hindu ceremony, and it was fantastic because we got to be there, and we got to love and serve the people around us. But at the same time, like, there were parts of the ceremony we couldn't participate in. And for once, like, no one even asked me if I wanted to. They knew I wasn't going to. And they actually just very kindly were so respectful about it. And so we were able to be there and celebrate her. And then at the same time was not pushed to do anything we were not comfortable with, anything that would compromise our faith. And I think that was very clear. And I would have never thought that was going to happen, because my family used to just push and push. And now we're at a place where I think we very much like respect each other's boundaries. Like, I think they understand that, I only follow Jesus, and that's the only person I'm going to worship. So even though for you, it might just be like, throwing like, or just, what's it called, singing certain chants. Like, I can't do that. And they respected it. And then on the other hand, like, I think I'm learning that the best way to show, God's love with those around me, especially like, I feel like my role is by service. And so I was really able to like serve my family that weekend. I like was trying to help my sister get all of her clothes ready, to have everything like ready for her, to blow dry her hair. I was helping my mom get her room and cleaning their stuff, and just like was like on it for a lot of that weekend by God's grace. And again, I think they saw, they're like, oh, she's still a very active member of this family. She still loves us. She still cares for us. And, she's putting our needs before hers. And I think that's like, hopefully, like, the whole point of all of this is that if like they were to see something different in me and Devin, that they would be able to point it like back to Jesus, and they would say, oh, maybe it's because they follow God. And this is what the people of God look like. So lots of redemption and lots of hope, I think.
I love that. That's so great. Do you have a sense of any like opening inroads with, I mean, you mentioned those things right there, but are there any openings that you sense are happening that you can like, I can see like maybe the door is opening here for some opportunities, or somebody's like becoming curious, or or are you just in a stage of like, I'm showing up, I'm praying for my family, and those are the opportunities that we have right now?
Yeah, I think the latter is probably the majority of what's going on right now, is like serving them and loving them. But then also unapologetically kind of sharing, like, like, I'm praying for you. And so they know that, like, maybe if something good happens, or if something like, it's like, oh, hey, like, God showing up. But then at the same time, I think I am like, occasionally, like, I'll try to invite them to some of the things our like church does, like Good Friday service, for example. I had like invited my sister and brother-in-law to come and attend. And I think they were actually pretty open. They just ended up having plans, but I think they understood that it was very important to us. They like know how important church is to us, and how important Jesus is to us. And I think because, they love us and care for us, I think they wanted to show up to that for that. And so I think that's like opportunities in ways, like when there are things I think would be like great for people who don't know Christ to learn more about Christ, and just continuing to invite them. I think people are a little bit more open to just come and hear and explore. And they also know, like, although like this is absolutely what I believe, like, I'm not going to force anyone. I'm not going to say like, hey, if you don't believe, I'm not going to love you. I do think you should believe, because it's a beautiful gift and it's changed my life, and I think it's going to change yours. But like, our relationship is not going to is not going to be hurt because you made a different decision. And that goes all the way back to where we started, about someone loving me, even though I was in a very different place, and loving me even when I said no, and how healing that was for me.
Thanks for tuning in, alumni. If you know someone who would enjoy the InterVarsity World Changers podcast, please be sure to share the episode with them. You can also support the podcast by leaving a rating and a review, or by visiting our donation page in the show notes. InterVarsity World Changers is brought to you by the InterVarsity Alumni Relations Team, hosted and produced by John Steele, production assistance by Mike Centera, and edited by Caleb Leppert. Our theme song is Crazy by InterVarsity alumnus Andy Minio. Go change that world, alumni.